This is the Farm Voices podcast, sharing information about regenerative agriculture. I'm Kevin Castle, speaking this afternoon with Monte Bottens of the Bottens family farm and the host of the wonderful AgEmerge Podcast. Hello, thank you for joining us and sharing your time.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
How long have you been farming?
I started farming officially with animals in 4-H at the age of 5, I guess, but row crop farming since 16, and I just turned 51. So we're on the downhill slope of the total crops left.
You started as a clover bud.
There you go.
Where is your farm located?
We're located in Northwest Illinois, a small town of Cambridge. So we're about 35 miles outside of John Deere's headquarters in Moline.
And what types of crops and animals do you raise?
Currently corn, soybean, because we're in the corn soybean belt per se. But we also integrate some small grains for cover crop seed and also diversity. So some wheat, triticale, barley this year. And then we also have a pastured meat business. So we have grass-fed and finished cattle. We have pastured pork that are raised in timber, and also pastured poultry and mobile pasture layer eggs. So, and then we sell those all direct to consumer through our website called Grateful Graze.
You touched on this a little bit already, but can you give us an idea of the feel of the location of your farm and what is significant about the location from a farming perspective?
In our area, I mean, we're blessed with wonderful weather and soils, but a lot of our ground is rolling topography. So quite a bit of the ground that we farm is classified as highly erodible land. So we've been long-term adopters of no-till farming techniques. And in the last 10 years, we've done a lot of work with cover crops and also integrating livestock onto those cover crops in order to improve soil health. But a lot of we have to deal with a lot of erosion from the past. So 150 years of moldboard plowing hills takes quite a toll on the land. So we're trying to regenerate those areas that have been abused or just lack of technology in the past that all you could do was plow. So we're trying to correct those things from the past.
And you said you were early adopters of some of these practices like no-till. When did you start practicing no-till?
Probably 25 to 30 years ago or so, 1994, I think. So I guess, 30 years.
Mm-hmm. And that was that mainly in response to the erodible land issue?
It was, but it was also in response to time. It was much less time intensive to no-till farm than to farm with all the my dad and I both worked at a farm equipment dealership. So our busy season at the dealership was obviously the same busy season at our farm. So by going to no-till, it saved us a lot of time. And then we saw the soil benefits and thought, that's interesting. And it's similar story to the cover crops. When we got the cover crops, we did that for erosion. But then we saw the benefits of the ecosystem as far as birds and bugs and those kind of things, and also saw the benefits in weed control. So there's been several times where, and I think most farmers would agree, they do one thing expecting result A, but maybe the result B and C are bigger than their original result A. So it just takes time watching and observing what you're doing and applying what you see to a larger context on your farm.
Can I stop and ask why birds and bugs were a benefit that you actually celebrated seeing on the farm? Usually that's something that we're trying to mitigate.
Well, see, that comes from thinking all bugs are bad. So for every one pest, there's 1,700 beneficial or bugs that don't bother a crop. So, when we go out to kill the one pest, we're dropping a nuclear warhead on the field and killing all the good ones too. So to me, I like to celebrate insect diversity, because with that, we've been able to use no insecticides for several years now, because the ecosystem keeps itself in control. And while, I like seeing birds and those kind of things, it's much like seeing earthworms in your field. you see earthworms in your field, it's a general indication that all of the soil biology is functioning, because they're kind of the top of the food chain pyramid in the soil. If you see birds in your field, and we're seeing a return of a lot of the prairie birds and that we really have lost over the last 30 years, when we see those coming back, and I contribute that largely to not using neonic insecticides on the seed, getting rid of seed treatments. But when we see those come back, that's an indicator species. It's the canary in the coal mine per se. So we're not farming to get birds. We're not farming to get bugs. But because our farming practices are in line with the ecosystem, those are great indicators or feedback loop for us to know that we're doing the right thing.
And do you see some of the benefits directly within your farming business of doing the right thing?
Right. So again, we haven't had the expense of insecticides. So you have the spend, or the other thing is they cause damage, and you have some economic loss before you spend the money on an insecticide. Plus, there's costs to me or our crew applying insecticides. There's a safety factor. So all of those things are positives for being able to see those things get into balance with each other.
Mm-hmm. And so you're seeing that as a savings reflected within your business operations.
Sure. And it's just, it's fun.
So you mentioned cover crops, you mentioned no-till, reduced use of insecticides, pesticides, and you have continued to grow and develop regenerative agriculture practices on your farm, correct? Starting with these early methods that you initiated.
Yeah, and I think kind of that next step is we're getting into crop diversity, so we're incorporating more small grains. Then that allows us opportunity for summer cover crops and summer grazing or haying opportunities, just to extend the rotation and create more diversity within our farming system. The other thing is we've also, with the integration of the livestock, it's an additional revenue source. Also has done some amazing things to those moldboard plowed out hillsides I talked about earlier. We've noticed dramatic improvements with the integration of cover crops and cattle. So we're regenerating those soils on a rapid pace over just no-till or no-tilling cover crops. So each step seems to be taking a significant increase in those steps. Plus, I've eliminated fungicides. I have not demonstrated a need for fungicide, and we do that nutritionally, but also by having that biodiversity of the soil organisms in there. So, that's exciting too. Mm-hmm. And yet it doesn't set us back on residue decay then, because we've nuked the field of fungicide, fungal species that are the heavy lifters in residue decay. And there's just, everything works together. But a lot of us as farmers, we've been taught that we have to play the whack-a-mole game. If you have this problem, you whack it with this jug. And this problem, you hit it with a different jug. The problem is we don't see what all that jug affects in the entire cropping and ecosystem. So try to avoid the whack-a-moles.
Right. Mm-hmm. You've answered this a little bit already, but the regenerative agriculture practices that you're using on your farm are improving your access to the market. And is that impacting how customers see your product?
Well, for us to compete directly with the oligopoly of, the meat industry, with the 4 people that control 85% of the meat, that's asking to commit business suicide. So we chose not to go there, and instead we have chosen more of a niche, higher value product that is hard for people to find. So going to grass-fed and finished beef, pastured poultry, pastured pork, and those things allow us to have a higher margin and not be in competition with, Tyson, Cargill, IBP, and or those kind of people. So that's why we've chosen to go those routes. And regenerative is important to those folks, but it's more so everybody's interested in themselves, right? So they buy their food from us because it's healthy and it's of health benefit. And there's science behind raising animals this way that contributes to human health positive effects. So that's why people really buy it. And the fact that it's raised regeneratively, that's nice. And the fact that it, helps the animal welfare and it helps the carbon neutrality or is carbon, sequestering, that's great, but they still buy it for themselves. So it's when all those things can align, I think that's a triple win in what we're doing.
Very good. And have you used any USDA federal or state programs to support or augment your regenerative or conservation agriculture practices?
Early on when we started with cover crops, we were part of a CSP. We had a contract that helped us with cover crops and also with split nitrogen timing. The whole pastured project has been under our own leadership because that's so kind of out there on ahead of the curve that to fall back on the recommendations required currently would be kind of a step backwards from where we wanted to be in our management program. So we elected to do that one out of our own pocket 100%.
Could you share a success story in working with these programs?
Well, it gave us when we went to the nitrogen side dress applicator, it gave us the capital needed to purchase that applicator and get into a self-propelled sprayer required to do it. So there was some, capital involved there. Cover crop, same thing. We were getting paid to, offset it and those kind of things. And we used that opportunity to learn how to make it work for the time. So that both of those practices are still in place today on our farm.
You also had a lot of infrastructure work that you were returning to the farm after converting to commodities. Am I correct? So you have moved sort of back in the master plan of your farm to incorporate regenerative agriculture. I remember a particular story that you had mentioned about having made modifications over the years to the farm to incorporate different main crops. And as you started to incorporate regenerative agriculture, you started to find the need to restore some of the pasture infrastructure and different components of the farm that had been removed to make space for the commodity crops. Am I correct?
Right.
In that?
Yeah,
that is an interesting story.
Well, I grew up tearing down every barn, shed, fence, water line that we needed because, we have to farm corn everywhere. And that's what corn farmers do. And then now we're back out, have animals back on that land, and sure wish they had nice fences. So we've gone to all portable infrastructure where we can set up, have the animals there and tear it all down quickly. We also, the permanent pasture where we spend 5 to 7 months a year, that has had no infrastructure when we started. So it required exterior fencing, water, all those things, all those solutions to make daily move grazing possible.
And so you're innovating a lot of these systems as you're
there are parts and pieces that are available on the shelf, but there's still a lot of things to build together to make things work. So, we have virtual fencing now, but the water isn't virtual, so it still has to be moved. So we're investigating ways to make the water move with the animals, and just lots of things around making things more efficient and better for the animals.
And you have likewise innovated a system of marketing your farm products, which are niche products, as you mentioned. Can you talk a little bit about Grateful Grays?
Sure. And there's several other people ahead of me that I took a hint from. I really modeled what Seven Sons in Indiana were doing, and White Oak Pastures in Georgia, and Nourished by Nature in North Dakota. Really looked to them and what they're doing. And then there's several other friends of mine in the space, McIntyre Pastures in Idaho, and Stemple Creek out in California, and also Pasture Bird and what they Primal Pastures there in California too. But yeah, it was just a direct to consumer approach. Now we had to do some things for logistics on the backside of the farm. We have several freezer containers at our farm that we do for the logistics side of it, and just figuring out that whole how do you handle it and deliver it and ship it. It's not easy. So you can be easy if you just sell your animal to the local auction or the local big four, and then go complain at the coffee shop or the bar. Or you can take a little more responsibility and a lot more time and effort and sell it by the cut. So that's just what we wanted to do. We wanted to connect directly to the consumer.
Mm-hmm. And I think I read on your website that it was perhaps your father that had given you a piece of advice, which was that at a certain point in time, everything that was sold from the farm walked off the farm. Did I get that right?
Yeah. He said, well, when he was a kid or my grandpa, everything they sold walked off the farm.
Mm-hmm.
You raised the grain to feed the animals, then you sold the animals off the farm. It was, you had the breeding stock, you had the fat stock, and that's how you generated your revenue. Today, we're much more compartmentalized, and there's obviously pluses to that, and then there's also minuses to that. But we can still see, on yield monitors some 50, 80 years later, where those pastures and barns and feedlots were. You can still see that effect in the soil for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty amazing. So if we can, do more to keep more dollar on the farm, that's interesting. And I've really broken it down. I'm looking for revenue per acre in three ways. And I really want them to be third. So if we grow a traditional commodity corn, soybean crop, I want that, the revenue per acre, or excuse me, the gross profit per acre to be just 1/3 of what that acre is capable of. Then I want another third of that revenue stream to come from what I call value add. So if we're growing food grade corn that's non-GMO, or if we're grazing animals on it, and then can sell those, any way that we can add value to that crop, I want that to be a third of the total gross profit per acre pie. And then the other third of the gross profit per acre pie that I'm really aiming at is ecosystem services. So programs where we're reducing our carbon intensity by applying less nitrogen, utilizing no-till cover crops, where we're providing ecosystem services and habitat to birds. So groups such as Pheasant Unlimited, or Pheasants Forever, Ducks Unlimited, and
Mm-hmm.
Audubon Society, all those people can get involved. Then also there's Nature Conservancy is very interested in how we're doing our land and what that means for the whole ecosystem. So I really think not only everybody just thinks carbon credits, but carbon credits are one piece of that ecosystem piece of pie. But I think we need to look at everything in there and what the value of that land is to the entire environment and community. So I think we need to I really think there's an opportunity to triple the gross profit per acre over what we're doing today. And we've got a lot of things stacking on top of each other to make that happen. And it's a lot like you think real estate development. So, as real estate, the value of land gets higher when you create more revenue on that land. So,
Mm-hmm.
a multi-block apartment building makes a lot more money than a single family home on a acre of land. So It's how can we create more of stack those enterprises and get more revenue streams, which also by default then gives us more diversity of income and de-risks it. So while it does add to the cost of management, no doubt, and adds cost of working capital for different things, but it also diversifies our business without and provides income streams irregardless of weather events and such.
Mm-hmm. And out of curiosity, in adding to the cost of management, is this part of your interest in technology and developing systems that can be put in place to help with those additional responsibilities?
I think, I look at, there's a gentleman in it's Birdwell and Clark Ranch in Dallas, and I just think he's been grazing cattle on his farm and working with cattle for probably 50 years. And he still doesn't know everything there is to know about grazing animals, right? I have a background in soil science, plant science, biology, chemistry, such, along with business. And, I still struggle at doing making the right decisions. And I think technology is going to help us get the labor costs out of things, by automating processes and such. But I think the new era of artificial intelligence is going to allow us to make decisions without that bias that we all have as people, that we all think we know best because that's just how humans are. And I think there's an opportunity then to make that decision making easier. So if we can make that decision making easier, we can make the labor and adoption component easier. I think that's where technology can lead to more regenerative agriculture-based production being done. So that it's hard work. And there's a reason why people plant, harvest in Florida. Okay, that's the joke amongst a lot of row crop farmers. Livestock is the 24/7, 365 thing, especially when it's on pasture. Livestock in a barn, much more controllable. You can add an app, you can see everything about your barn on your phone while you're in Florida, but you still have to have somebody there for the emergencies and to take care of things. But how could we make regenerative animal agriculture, regenerative crop agriculture as easy as conventional agriculture?
Mm-hmm.
If we can do that, that'll eliminate a lot of the barriers to adoption.
In addition to running your farm, you are also a consultant, a podcaster, an educator, an entrepreneur, an investor, and I would say inventor within the farming sector. You are helping with the challenges and opportunities facing farmers across the United States on a daily basis. So I'd like to ask you, thinking about the 2024 Farm Bill and/or the Inflation Reduction Act, do you have any suggestions on how the new Farm Bill could work better for you and other farmers?
There's a famous quote: "The bureaucracy is expanding to meet the expanding needs of the bureaucracy." And asking for money to just be taken away from conventional agriculture will never happen. It's just too ingrained. So unfortunately, despite my better libertarian bend on things, we really need to be able to provide the same de-risking, the same incentives to regenerative in order to make it competitive with the giant industrial, commercial, commoditized farming model. Now, what that is, I don't know. But there's certain things we can do to encourage certain incentives of, ecosystem services. So like cover crops, they provide habitat, they provide erosion control, water quality, carbon sequestration, all that. There certainly can be a lot more emphasis put onto that. Whether it's insurance premium credits, a lot has happened to de-risk the planting dates and insurance claims associated with that. How how we get, I mean, the grants that have come out for on-farm processing of animals and also on-farm processing of food, those were good. It's, knowing that they're there and how to use them and put them together. That's always, not everybody knows everything that there is to know about those things in a timely manner. So that's those were good programs. What the answer is, the answer is to not incentivize the commodity the way it is, but that'll never change. I don't think there's just too much money and big corporations involved in that. We just need to be able to get regenerative farming onto a level playing field. So, looking at the soil health principles and thinking, how can we do that? I wish I had an answer for you. I don't have an answer, but having our priorities align with soil health, because we know that soil health translates to animal health, human health, ecosystem health. So if we can focus on those 5 principles of soil health, then we have a good chance of aligning that. So if there can be incentives to minimize disturbance, to keep the ground covered, to have a living root all the time, to integrate livestock onto the land, and to increase diversity. Those are the 5 principles. If there's a way to do that, then that will encourage regenerative farming to take place and become the conventional.
Mm-hmm. Some legislators wish to take the $20 billion in conservation agriculture funding in the IRA and use it for other farm bill purposes. Do you have any thoughts about potential impacts of repurposing that funding?
Just typical politics in Washington, huh? Why take it away from that and give it to what we've always done? That's a great way to make a difference, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm joking. Well, we can't figure out how to do it. Let's just throw more money at the same thing that don't work.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the only reason they're saying that is because the lobbyists are in their pocket telling them that. So that's just how the world works, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. What specific programs or funding are most helpful to your farming operations, if this applies?
Let's look at it this way. Why do I participate in these programs? I don't really like them, but I have to stay competitive. If I don't do it, somebody else does, and I'm at a competitive disadvantage. So you're kind of stuck into the program, whether you want to be or not, and that's kind of interesting. I would prefer to not have any government programs, but I can't do that. I need to be able to be competitive with everyone else out there. As far as other programs I'm getting for our regenerative farm operation, I'm really not getting anything there with the livestock business. But it's I don't know. It's kind of a necessary evil at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm. What would you like to see your member of Congress do to help improve your farming operations and profitability? Or what barriers to profitability should be addressed?
Well, I mentioned my libertarian bend before. If I'm sitting around waiting for my congressman to help me with my farming, might as well forget it. I mean, government moves at glacial speed. If they could just quit changing stuff and quit screwing stuff up, that'd be great. I just leave it alone would be the best thing you could do. But I don't know. I just I just don't want to rely on the government dole. We'd like to be independent, but because there's so much money thrown in other directions, we can't be. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't have anything in particular that I need or desire. Just to be left alone would be wonderful.
What should be our number one priority with farming? I would say the 2024 Farm Bill, but just in general, what actually would be helpful?
Everybody's running around like Chicken Little with their head cut off with global warming caused by carbon dioxide. I think that, there is elevated carbon dioxide. You really need to look at landscape management has changed so much that our landscape management with all these broad acre, non-diverse crops is having a remarkable impact on our weather cycles and temperature. Probably, if people in their studies out there that's done the math, it's significantly greater than the carbon emissions, especially in the localized scenarios. So I would appreciate more into that and realize that we're going to run out of soil with the way that we're farming now before global warming ever gets us. And nobody's paying attention to that. We got 40 to 60 crops left the way we're farming. And that's a for sure.
40 to 60 seasons left, planting seasons?
Yeah, because we're just burning through our soil like crazy.
And it's eroding, right? When you say burning through the
soil. Eroding and releasing carbon from the way that we're farming with all the tillage and high synthetic inputs. And, everybody's got to do a little more every year in order to get a little bit better. And we're eroding through it. We're burning the carbon out of it. We're just doing some irreversible things to our soil. And a lot of the arable land we're covering it with concrete, and a lot of the arable land is going to be gone. And if you take population growth and you take, arable land availability, comes a time when those two intersect, and the math doesn't work anymore, no matter how much lab-grown meat you want to eat. So it's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anybody's paying attention to that. They're just, the carbon is in discussion. Soil is not, human health connection is not, quality of food, nutrient density of products is not in the loop. And these are really important issues, and it's not being discussed. It's it'll catch up to us eventually. 40 or 60 years isn't that far out.
No. Thanks for mentioning that.
So it's we get distracted by shiny objects, and we don't look at everything. We kind of look at whatever the loudest noises of the day are.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you would like to discuss?
Oh, I don't know. I probably said lots of things to offend people already. I'd hate to add any more, but I think there is the law of unintended consequences. For every thing that we think we're taking a step forward, sometimes we're taking one or two steps back, and we have to be willing to see things for how they are, not for how we want them to be. And so we have to be open-minded. We have to be willing to be wrong. So many things I've done, I've failed miserably, and that's great. But I don't let it bother me. I learn from it. I tweak, I change, I scrap, whatever needs to be done, and move on to the next thing. So for every 10 things I try, 8 are terrible failures, one's kind of okay, and one's good. But that one good one, had I not tried the 10, I never would have had it. So I think there's a lot of fear that people have to overcome, and a lot of paradigms and assumptions that we have to overcome in order to really get to the next generation of agriculture. And the government will be part of it, but the government's reactionary. It's always trails behind. It's whatever's popular, because that's how they get elected, and that's how they get their money. So it's we're always going to be following if that's the case. I think to be a leader, you need to do what is best, and you're responsible for learning for your particular context and your farm and applying the principles and practices adamantly, not just talk about it, actually do it and try it and iterate and do it again. And we just need more of that spirit of innovation versus a spirit of fear. And if that would happen, farmers are some of the most innovative, creative MacGyver types around. And if we didn't unleash the full MacGyver in farmers, we would do some amazing things. And I'm sorry, I'm old. MacGyver could make a bomb out of duct tape and baling wire, but I think really farmers can do that. And if we would focus and do that, I think some amazing things would happen. And come alongside maybe with innovation grants or something to seed capital, make these things happen. Support the ideas versus try to create the ideas. That's why capitalism is so great, is because it's millions of people innovating instead of thousands in a bureaucracy coming up with an idea. And it's just sheer math of why capitalism works and communism never has. So it's hard to argue with the math. But I think there's lots of opportunities if we don't stifle it, if we don't make it so cushy to keep doing the same thing. I think change will occur and change at a more rapid rate.
So as a leader and an entrepreneur and an inventor, where would you put what would your priorities be? If you could spur others to be working in this space with you, what would your priority be?
Well, it depends on the person. Every person has a different passion for different things, right? I got into the animal livestock because, I enjoy it and those kind of things. But I think there's a lot of places to. Okay, so I interviewed somebody the other day on the podcast, and like any startup, the thing you want to do is solve a large scale problem that's easy to adopt, that don't require new distribution channels or techniques to make it happen. And they were talking about, oh yes, it's going to work in a sprayer just like everything else ever has, and there's a huge need for it. And yes, we can make it a GMO and all this stuff, and it checks all the boxes. Okay, but essentially, it's just an incremental change. Okay. Don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic idea they have, but it's just a step change. It's not a direction change. It's just we don't want to make too innovative a product that requires us to do anything different, because if we require to do anything different, then the adoption won't happen. You see, so all of this tech and innovation we're talking about all the time, they're all thinking inside of those constraints. How can we do this in a way that don't require much extra effort from a person or, extra innovation to make something happen so that it's easily adoptable, right? So that's how we're making these micro changes. And how do you change that to be, hey, I don't care what the distribution channel is. I don't care what it takes to apply it. I'm looking for what is the best complete system, okay? Which is the approach I've taken. What is the best complete system for integrating animal into agriculture and to be able to sell it? Okay, boom, here's first iteration. Wow, that really sucks and loses money. So how can we iterate that and make it a little bit better, a little more profitable, a little more fast, and just continually. So start with the ideal and then build that system around there versus just make conventional farming 1, 2, 3 bushels better. See, there's a total different approach, and all the investment money wants to chase the quick buck, right? But we all know that long-term soil health is what it needs. So we have to have that long-term approach in order to innovate systems basically from the ground up instead of just incrementally better. And that is that's hard to do, but it's what needs to happen to get the paradigm leap that needs to happen. If we just keep doing our sustainable agriculture, which isn't, there's no way it's sustainable. Can't do it for 1,000 years what we're doing. Okay, so anyway, if we just keep doing conventional agriculture today, we're not going to make a step change. We're not going to make a moonshot. Okay, we're not going to do big things. I get a kick out of Tesla. It's like, what are they going to do? Oh, we're going to send people to Mars. Okay, that's the big goal. But look, they're iterating there and they're getting there quickly. And or SpaceX, excuse me. But I think there's those different approaches. And as farmers, we need to be thinking more like, how do we get that long shot? But if we've gotten ourselves spread so thin on working capital because we've acquired so many acres, relying on government programs and subsidies and, the subsidies for crop insurance to get there, that we have no extra wiggle room to innovate, then, hey, you've painted yourself into a corner. And that's a choice that was made. And we really need to reconsider that choice.
That's great.
So sorry if I probably, anyone listening to this now, they're probably fully asleep, but no, the good part is I've been drinking coffee the entire time. So it's kept me awake at least. So
I don't think anyone will be asleep listening to this episode.
No, yeah. I'll get the hate letters. It'll be great.
40 to 60. That's the number we need to be watching. Thank you for your time.
Well, I appreciate it. You asked great questions, and I'm sorry I didn't have a better answer on what we need to do on the next farm bill. I don't know if I think my hopes always lied in the farmer, and I'm going to do what I can to help the farmer, and hopefully then government programs will come in line with that, and we'll go from there.
That is great. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Links to the interviewed guests, farms, and topics discussed can be found in the episode notes. The Farm Voices podcast is produced by the Regenerative Agriculture Coalition, a working group of climate reality project leaders and chapter members. Please subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and share the episode with others. It helps us raise the visibility of this important information, and we greatly appreciate your support. Join us in the next episode for more on the 2024 Farm Bill and farms and ranches practicing regenerative and conservation agriculture methods.